number is going to determine whether you retire at 62 or work until you're 74. Most don't find out which one until it's too late to fix it. Guess your number right now. How much do you think you have saved compared to where you should be at your age? Got it? Hold on to that. $107,000. That's the average sitting in the 401k of someone in their late 50s. 650k is the target. That's not a gap. That's 10 years of your life that didn't count the way you thought they did. 3 years ago, I'm standing in my buddy Kevin's driveway. He's backing a 34,000 motorcycle off a trailer. He looks at me and says, I put in 31 years. I'm allowed one nice thing. 11 weeks later, Kevin doesn't have a job. This isn't a video about a motorcycle or about getting rich quick. It's about the 10 years of your life where one wrong move doesn't just cost you money, it costs you the ability to ever catch back up. I'm going to show you all 5 traps people fall into. Traps that most are stuck in, but totally unaware of. And by the end, you'll know exactly which one you're already standing in. I'm Kevin's friend. This is the channel that skips the get rich quick hype and just shows you what the math actually does. If that's what you're here for, subscribe and help out with a new channel just starting off. Here's the whole video in one line. You think the danger of your 50s is that you didn't save enough? The real danger is that everything that used to be a safe decision now runs on completely different math. And nobody hands you the new rule book. Trap 1, the reward purchase. This is Kevin's motorcycle, and the category is much bigger than that. It's the truck, the boat, the second vehicle, the lake property, the club membership. Anything with a real price tag that we buy in our 50s because 3 decades of showing up feels like it should produce something we can point to. Here's what almost nobody explains about why this specific decade is the worst time to make that purchase. It's called the sequence of returns risk. A money hit that lands when you're 33 has 30 years to heal before you really need it. The same hit landing at 56 gives you 3 to 7 years before you're pulling from that account to live. And there's no time left to wait it out. Which means a dollar spent on a depreciating asset in your 50s costs more in real terms than that same dollar would have cost you at 35. You're not just losing the purchase price, you're losing it during the exact stretch where losses are hardest to recover from. Kevin's bike, once you count the loan interest, the insurance, and the storage he paid for before he stopped riding it, comes out to something like $58,000 gone. Close to 2 full years of what he used to save annually. Worse when you consider he got offers for a third of that when he tried to sell it in a rush. Nobody budgets for the version of themselves that gets laid off 11 weeks later. The trap was never wanting something nice after 30 years. It's that the wanting and the buying happen in the same weekend. No pause, no gut check. Nobody stopped to ask the one question that actually mattered. What if I don't have a job in 18 months? Kevin didn't ask it. 18 months later, he had his answer. And the motorcycle wasn't even the expensive part. That is what he didn't know was coming next. And it's the one that turned Kevin's bad purchase into a real crisis instead of just an embarrassing one. Kevin had a plan. Everyone has a plan. His was work until 67, let the last decade carry the savings. He had 11 more years of paychecks built into that plan when the motorcycle loan started. He had 4 months of paychecks left when the plant made the decision for him. Another guy, Nate, is running the exact same plan right now. At 53, as ops manager for a regional distributor, making $128K. 3 years ago, I asked Nate about his retirement timeline, and he said without hesitating, I'll work until 67 easy. Same tone you'd use to say you'll eat lunch tomorrow. His plan was to front-load his savings hard in the final decade, once the kids were off the payroll and he had more room to breathe. But you don't get fired from a plan. You just find out it was never yours to keep. The 2026 EBRI Retirement Confidence Survey put a hard number on this, and it should scare you more than it does. Workers plan to work around 65. Retirees actually stop at 62. That's not a rounding error. That's 3 fewer years of saving than almost every man in this decade is quietly counting on. 3 in 5 retirees left before 65. Close to half didn't choose the date chose them. Kevin didn't choose his either. Of those who retired earlier than planned, 41% cited a health problem or disability, and corporate restructuring or downsizing accounted for another 35% of the unplanned exits. Roughly 3 in 4 of these early unplanned retirements were driven by circumstances the worker never controlled in the first place. There's a second gap stacked on top of that one. 75% of workers assume they'll keep earning some income during retirement, but only around 27% of actual retirees end up doing that. The backup plan most are quietly counting on doesn't show up when they need it. Nate's 401k sits at around $410,000 at 56. well above the Vanguard 2026 median. Run the standard retirement math, forward 11 more years to 67 with normal contributions and growth. He lands close to the 650K number from the start of the video. On paper, Nate has got everything covered. Here's the problem. The math only works if he actually gets 11 more years. If Nate gets pushed out at 58 instead of 67, he doesn't lose a little time. He loses 9 of his 11 remaining years, the exact years his plan was counting on to close the gap. He's sitting around 460K, nowhere close to 650, with no more paychecks left to add to it. The fix is a mental shift, more than a math one. Build your saving plans as if 62 is your real retirement age, not 67. Get it right and you're forced out early, you're already covered. Get it wrong and you work until 67 anyway. You just retire 5 years ahead of where you planned. Plan for 67 instead and get pushed out at 60, and you're 5 years behind on a plan that never had any slack built in. Kevin had planned for 67. He's currently living year 1 of a retirement he never agreed to, on a runway that's down to weeks. And the next trap is the one that would have made even a healthy version of Kevin's plan collapse, because it doesn't care whether you saved enough. It cares whether you're the only healthy income left standing in your family. Trap 3, the sandwich. This trap showed up for Renee 2 years before it showed up for Kevin, which is part of why they've stayed close through all of this. Renee is 55, manages logistics for a regional hospital network, makes $102K a year. Her father, 82, has early-stage Parkinson's and lives in a memory care wing that runs close to $6,200 a month. Renee covers about $2,400 of that once his pension and social security are applied. At the same time, her 27-year-old son moved back in with his infant daughter after a layoff, contributing what he can while he retrains for a new certification. Renee has been quietly pulling from her own retirement account to keep both households standing, and at the current rate, she's looking at serious trouble inside 3 years. You can't overdraft on love. You can overdraft on everything it costs to prove it. AARP's most recent data counts roughly 63 million family caregivers in the US, a sharp climb from a decade ago, and caregivers supporting a relative with a serious condition like dementia or Parkinson's routinely spend thousands of dollars a year out of pocket, on top of their own household costs. Nearly half of caregivers under 50 are simultaneously raising a child under 18 in the same house, which is exactly what earns this trap its name. Pressure from both directions, landing in the one decade you most need to be saving aggressively instead. There's no clean spreadsheet fix here, because the real obstacle isn't arithmetic. It's the 3 conversations nobody wants to have. One with an aging parent about what their actual finances can and can't cover. One with an adult child about a real spoken timeline for standing on their own again. And one with yourself about a firm annual dollar cap you will actually hold to, out loud, even when it feels cold. Renee has told Kevin more than once that the math only works if you accept a hard truth early. You cannot fully fund 3 retirements, yours, your parents, and your kids, off one income. You can fully fund one and meaningfully support the other 2. Try to fund all 3 completely, and the only one you actually control collapses first, and then nobody in the family is supported by anything. She's watching Kevin getting closer to needing the same conversation from the other direction, except in his case, there's no third income left to even attempt the math with. Just a severance clock and a wife starting to ask what the plan is if it hits 0. Trap 4, the concentrated stock blind spot. This is the quietest one, and it's the one that would have finished Kevin off completely if Renee hadn't got it in time. 2 years ago, over half his 401k match was sitting in his own employer's stock, the same employer that laid him off. He came within one bad restructuring of losing his job and his retirement account in the same phone call. Sam has worked at the same publicly traded logistics company for 28 years. He's 56, a plant director, makes about 168K with bonus, and a large chunk of his net worth is sitting in that one company's stock restricted units, an employee purchase plan, and a 401k match that's defaulted into company shares since the day he started. Last time, the 3 of us actually sat down and ran the numbers. 61% of Sam's investable assets were riding on the single ticker. Confidence in your employer and exposure to your employer are the same position, wearing 2 different names. Sam's argument is always the same one. He works there, sees the leadership decisions, sees the contract pipeline, plant expansion plans. None of that reasoning is unique to Sam. Employees at Enron believed exactly the same thing in 2001. So did people at Lehman Brothers right up to 2008. The people most confident in a company's stock are almost always the people closest to it, which is precisely the blind spot. Holding too much of any single stock is risky on its own. Holding too much of your own employer's stock is worse, because now your paycheck and your portfolio move together. A bad year for the company can cost you the job and the investment account in the same month. Standard portfolio guidance caps any single position at 10 to 15% of what you actually have invested, with employer stock ideally at zero. Most people in Sam's position are running 6 to 8 times over that line, and every one of them has a story about why their company is the exception to it. The fix is simple to describe and hard to start. Set up a recurring automatic sell order through your broker, a fixed number of shares sold on the same date every quarter until you're under that 15% line. The tax cost of doing it gradually is small next to the cost of being right about your employer for 27 years and wrong in the 28th. Automation matters more than timing here, because the version of you who has to make this call manually every quarter is the version who keeps finding a reason to wait one more. Kevin got out in time, barely. What's coming next? He didn't see coming at all, and neither will you, until you're the one opening the envelope. Trap 5, the healthcare gap. This is the one almost nobody talks about. It's the one where the motorcycle, the severance, the emergency fund, all of it stops being separate problems and becomes one number on one bill, due on the same day every month. Kevin opened his envelope in February. Before we get to what was in it, you need to understand this isn't just Kevin's problem. Frank, retired at 58 with $1.7 million saved and a paid-off house, on paper, completely solid. The number he never ran was health insurance. The bill always arrives. Sometimes it just arrives years later. Leave a job before 65 and you leave employer coverage with it, unless your old company still offers retiree health benefits, which fewer and fewer do. Most early retirees end up shopping the ACA marketplace instead, where pricing climbs sharply with age, and the enhanced subsidies that had kept costs manageable from 21 through 2025 expired at the end of last year, with Congress not extending them. The numbers for anyone above the income cutoff this year are severe. A 60-year-old earning $62,000 might land around $515 a month with subsidies, but earn just $2,000 more and cross the 400 of poverty cliff, and that same person's premium can jump past $1,200 a month with no subsidy at all. KFF's modeling shows a 60-year-old couple sitting near that cliff facing a benchmark plan that consumes roughly a quarter of their household income. Frank and his wife opened their renewal notice in February and watched their combined annual premium jump from about $10,800 to nearly $27,000 for coverage they'll need to carry for 7 more years until Medicare picks it up. Run that forward, and it's north of $180K that never once showed up in his retirement plan. This is where it closes the loop, and it's the ugliest number in the whole video. Kevin never intended to be an early retiree, but once his COBRA coverage lapsed 3 months after his severance ran out, he and his wife hit the same marketplace Frank did, at worse odds. Their quoted premium, $23.4K a year, paid straight out of an emergency fund built for 6 months of unemployment, not 16. Here's the number that should actually stop you. $23,400 divided by 12 is $1,950 a month. Kevin's motorcycle payment was $610 a month. He didn't trade a bike payment for a bigger one. He traded a bike payment for a bill more than 3 times the size, with none of the choice this time, and a bank account with weeks, not months, left to cover it. This is why the first trap in this video was never really about a motorcycle. The bike payment was optional, this one isn't. The trap was never retiring early. It's retiring early or being pushed into it without a fully funded separate healthcare bridge account plus real room for the part you don't control. If 62 is your real target, the rough number to plan around is $20,000 to $25,000 per person per year until Medicare. Not the $5,000 or $10,000 most people quietly assume in their head. That number lives outside your retirement portfolio in its own account before you ever hand in notice. If it isn't there yet, the date on your retirement plan isn't real yet either. The ending. Your 50s feel like the calm decade. They're actually the most dangerous one you'll ever navigate financially. The most wealth built up to protect, the least runway left to recover from a mistake, and the strongest pull to finally ease off the wheel. Every trap in this video is the same mistake wearing a different shirt. Treating your 50s like the back half of your career, when they're actually the front half of your transition. And the math doesn't care which one you thought you were in. Nobody here went broke in a single dramatic moment. Every one of these is a slow leak. 5 small holes that ran quietly for years before anyone noticed the level dropping. Go back through almost any retirement that landed worse than expected, and you won't find one catastrophic decision sitting at the bottom of it. You'll find 5 quiet leaks that ran long enough to empty the tank before anyone admitted what was happening. One more thing about Kevin before the part you actually came for. He sold the bike in April, took the 8K loss, and cut the storage and insurance payments the same week. This job still isn't back. He's interviewing in 2 states over and might have to move his family to take something. But the leak stopped 2 months ago, and that's the part most men in his position never actually reach. The money that was leaving every month has stopped leaving. The hole hasn't been refilled. It's not getting any deeper. That's the whole move. Everything after that point is recoverable. So what can you do about it? Here's what to actually do this week. 1. Add up your fixed monthly obligations, mortgage or rent, car payments, insurance, tuition, subscriptions you can't cancel with one phone call, loan minimums, any recurring transfer to family. Divide the total by your take-home pay. Over 55%, that's not a discipline problem. That's a structural one. And something on that list needs to be a candidate for elimination in the next 6 months. Cancel one thing this week, just one. 2. If you're holding any employer stock anywhere, 401k, brokerage, ESPP, log in today and find your real concentration percentage. Over 15, set up an automatic quarterly sell of a fixed share count starting next month and let it run on autopilot until you're under that number. You will not do this by hand. The automation is the entire strategy, not a nice to have. 3. If retiring before 65 is even a possibility, write down the gap in years between that date and 65. Multiply by 20k for every person in your household, and that number is your healthcare bridge. It needs its own conservative account before you walk out the door, not a line item folded into your general retirement spending. If it's not there yet, the retirement date moves until it is. None of that requires an advisor. All 3 are startable this weekend. Whichever of the 5 traps you caught yourself quietly rationalizing while I talked, that's the one to start on first tonight. Drop a comment with which one hit closest, even the one you're a little embarrassed by. I read every one of them. If this was useful, please do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.